I know everybody's been buzzing this morning with the election results, good or bad, depending on how you feel. But we really would like to send our thanks to all of our poll workers. We staffed 6 precincts yesterday, and we sincerely appreciate your time and your effort. Thank you. So we all know that during these turbulent times, our democracy is under threat, and everybody is going to quickly turn their attention to the 2024 election. Sorry. So 2 of the last 4 presidents took office even though they lost the popular vote. About 30% of Americans still believe that Joe Biden is not the legitimate United States president. It doesn't take a constitutional amendment to fix this. The National Popular Vote and Electoral Count Act legislation can. In fact, we're 72% of the way to accomplishing the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and if Mitch McConnell will support this, we will be on track. We can do this today, and we'll learn how with this extremely important program, make every vote count, how to restore fair and trusted presidential elections. So our moderator today is Mike Lafferty. He's retired in December of 2021 after a 32-year career with the Orlando Sentinel. He's held numerous writing and editorial positions with the Sentinel over his career. Most recently, he was one of the newspaper's opinion editors, a role in which he wrote editorials and oversaw production of other opinion content, which is so important. He's a graduate of University of Central Florida. Mike's a popular and frequent moderator for Hot Topics and our election candidate forum, so please help me welcome Mike to the stand.
Well, thanks, everybody. Wow, that was easier than it looked. Well, thanks, everybody. It's been a wild week so far, and it's going to get a little wilder in a few hours. So thank you for coming out here and being part of this. One of our speakers was to have been Aubrey Jewett, a well-known UCF professor, but he had a family emergency and he is not able to attend. So our main speaker is going to address what Aubrey was going to talk about, which is the Electoral Count Act. And that main speaker is Kathleen Ridder Crampton. She is the chair of Floridians for National Popular Vote. And as one of the founding members, she's been involved in both the state and national movement to elect the President of the United States by a popular vote. Kathleen had a career as a senior executive, and she has experience across the healthcare sector and sits on several boards in information systems, healthcare, and finance. She's a graduate of Boston University with a BA in American History. Kathleen holds an MPH, you'll have to tell me what that is, Masters of Public Health? Great. From Harvard University, and an MBA in Finance from George Washington University, and she is a certified financial planner. So, gosh, that is a lot. So let me introduce her. I'm going to go sit down. She has a presentation where she's going to tell you all about this, and I'll be back to ask some questions.
Thank you very much, Mike. Can you, wait a minute, we practiced this, and let's see if I can do it more efficiently than he did. See if I got it right. Yeah, I got it right. First of all, I want to tell you how pleased I am to be here. And if you look carefully on my breast, you'll see that I have both a League of Women Voters and a Floridians for National Popular Vote. And if it weren't for the League of Women Voters, not just here, but all across the state, there wouldn't be any Floridians for National Popular Vote. So I am indebted to everybody in this room. I am particularly indebted, of course, to Gloria today for arranging for all this. And I also want to talk about my wonderful supporters, many of whom are here in the room today. First of all, there is Ann Copenhaver, who I probably talk to once a day. She's probably glad that I'm here, so she doesn't have to talk to me on the phone or on a Zoom call. Valerie Schultz, who's head of our NPV in, oh, help me, Seminole County. We have Leslie Feinberg. Where are you, Les? There's Leslie, who is she actually does all our IT stuff, all of the analysis, the spreadsheets that we do. And last but not least is Louise Thompson, who puts out a newsletter for us. So a lot of the reason that I'm able to be here is because of these people who support me, so I am grateful to them. We're going to start, let's see if I can get this right. Okay, right, does that say? Okay. First of all, I am not an expert on the Electoral Count Reform Act, and I'm hoping on your table that you have a form. And interestingly enough, I downloaded this form from Susan Collins. Everyone know who Susan Collins is? She's a senator from Maine. She's a Republican, okay? And what happened was, after the election in 2020, a number of Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and in the House came together to address some of the issues related to the 2020 election. And I'm going to sort of walk down this, so you may want to take a look at it. But the point I'm trying to make is this is a bipartisan effort. And not only that, but Mitch McConnell said he's going to vote for it. So guess what? It's going to get passed. So what is it? It's really a procedural bill. And somebody mentioned earlier that maybe it was going to solve the problems of the Electoral College, and I don't think so. But what it will do is it will make our 2024 election neater and tidier, and we won't have some of the issues that we had, and you'll see. So let's walk through this quickly. So first of all, it addressed the issue of who gets to submit the Electoral College from each state to the vice president. You may recall that there was some confusion about that, right? So it says it identifies who the official is. The big issue, of course, is it the governor or is it the legislature? It doesn't really make any difference, except it has to be clear. Are you with me? So if someone's unhappy, too bad. If it's the vice president, if it's the governor, whatever, or anyway, it needs to be clear in each state who it is that does it. That's the first thing. The second thing is, this to me is really wonderful, and that is, if you know that if you may recall from 2000 that the process of appealing to the Supreme Court, you sort of had to juggle through the various levels of judicial review. This ends that. You'll see that it says there's a 3-judge panel, and if they can't agree, it goes directly to the Supreme Court. Third, it modernizes rules for counting electoral votes, and by the way, I don't know what that is, so please don't ask me about it. Let's get to the next one. The role of the vice president. You may recall that some people thought that the vice president should not accept some of the electoral slates that were submitted, right? Well, it is clear that it is solely ministerial. All they do is count. They don't choose. The next one, this one, I was so stunned by. The way it works now, if one person out of the 538 Congress people in Washington, let me say that again, one person objects to the process, it slows the whole thing down. Give me a break, right? So this changes it to 1/5 of one of the two bodies, either the House or the Senate. Does that make sense? And then last but not least, oh yes, and this one is so relevant to us. This says, you'll see if you look down here, you'll see in quotes, a failed election. So what is a failed election? Well, some smart people went back to try and find out what a failed election was intended, And it was for essentially acts of God. So, for example, let's pretend that Ian showed up yesterday instead of whatever it was 3 weeks ago. Got it? It would have been a mess, right? We couldn't have had our election here. So what this says is it's now going to be changed so that it defines exactly what a failed election is, rather than a legislator saying, oh, I think it's a failed election. It means it's an act of God. And obviously, that would have happened yesterday if that had been when Ian showed up. Does that make sense? All right, so those are, according to Susan Collins and the committee she works, that she's a member of, what the Electoral Count Reform Act is all about. And I describe it as procedural, and it's sort of cleaning up some what I call dangling participles. So I'm going to hold questions. If you have some, I'll try and answer them. But again, I'm not, I really learned about this maybe 2 months ago when I had to do the same thing for another group. So, but meanwhile, let me see if I can get this to work. Okay. Well, I know all of you here are aware that we had an election yesterday, right? And let's just take a couple of examples. Fetterman beat Oz. And let's try another one. Healy's beat Deal. And you know how we know? How do we know that he beat him? Or that both, one is a female, one's a male. They got more votes. Imagine that. There are you ready? 520,000 elected officials in the United States. Almost all of them are elected by popular vote, except for 2. And they are, of course, the president and the vice president. Does this make any sense? I don't think so. What we should have is one person, one vote. So let's take a look. This was already referred to, but this is kind of an interesting chart if you can see it. There have been 5 times where the candidate who got the most votes was not president. 2, all of us in this room remember, and the other 3, none of us in this room remember. So, why is that? Well, let's talk about 2 things here that I'd like you to, I'm going to read them, I'm sorry, but I really want to make the point. First of all, in the Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, it says the following, and this is just about all that it says. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives of that state. Got it? That's about it. And that sentence is what's called the plenary authority, which states have to figure out how the president how the electors in their state should be chosen. Now there's a little not well-known law which has been passed by 48 states. And it's called winner-take-all bills. Florida has passed that, and I believe it was among the last states to pass it, and I think it was 1869, but don't hold me to that. Winner-take-all bills are never referred to in the Constitution, and I'm going to tell you how it first occurred. So for those of you who may have forgotten, in 1796, the first election after George Washington said he wouldn't run for a 3rd term, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were the 2 candidates for presidency. And when it was over, John Adams won, and Thomas Jefferson was really unhappy. And the reason he was unhappy was because he discovered, and my numbers aren't exactly right, but the point's correct, that in the House of Burgess, that's what the House of Representatives was called back then, there had been around 15 electoral votes. And he had gotten 10 of those votes, but 5 of them, ready? 5 of them had gone to John Adams. And he was furious. So he got on his horse and he went back to Virginia, went to the House of Burgesses and said, gentlemen, sorry ladies, we weren't included back then, I don't like the way this worked out, and you shouldn't either. And so he said, why don't we pass a bill whereby whoever gets 51% of the vote gets all, let me say that again, gets all of the electoral votes. Got it? So in 1800, they went ahead, they passed it in Virginia, and guess who was our next president? Right? So that's how it started. It had nothing to do with fantasies about, small states or big states or urban states. That's my favorite. Oh my God, the founding fathers didn't want people from urban states telling us what to do. I said, really? There were only 95% of the people back then lived in rural areas. 5% lived in urban areas. They couldn't have cared less about that. They had some other issues, but we won't go there. So we have something called winner take all. And what's been the impact of winner take all? So let's go to here. So here's how it works. Let me say it again. Whoever wins gets all of the votes. 51% gets all the votes, which means, for example, Republicans in New York State or Democrats in Texas, their votes never count. Right? Do you understand what I'm talking about? They're disenfranchised. So what is the impact of that? Have you ever talked to someone from New York who says, oh, I'm a Republican, I never vote? Because my vote doesn't count, right? Same thing's true in California. Republicans say, I'm not going to vote. So you end up having a lower turnout. It's between 5 and 10%, depending on the state. You have much lower 5 to 10% lower turnout in what are called spectator states, states where there is no real competition. We're going to come back and talk more about battleground states in a minute. Moreover, if you are a battleground state, you get a lot more what I call federal largesse. Have you ever noticed that when there's fires in California, you don't see presidents out there much finding out how things are going? Same thing's true in Texas. Why? Because those are states where, in fact, there is not a lot of interest. And that's true here as well, only it's the opposite. Although we may no longer be a battleground state, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone notice that? That may have happened yesterday. So it's not really a good thing. And let me go a little bit further. Oh, I went in the wrong direction. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going the wrong direction. Sorry, guys. Okay, so take a look at this map. This is the number of campaign events between the primary and the actual election. This does not include fundraising, by the way. These are actual campaign events in 2020. 12 battleground states got 96% of the presidential campaign visits. We do not elect the President of the United States. We elect the President of the battleground states, right? Because all of those blanks, they don't count. They're reliably red or they're reliably blue. So let's keep going. So you think your vote counts as much as other people's votes in the United States. I'm here to tell you that anybody who votes in Florida, like me and the rest of you here, we do not count as much. So take a look at this chart. Florida has about 21 million people. And, oh, does this say 29? Oh, my bad. I've got the wrong slide up. Don't worry, it should say 30. Got it? We have 30 electoral votes. you'll see my point's made. Now take a look at all those smaller ones, and that's about 8 million people, and they have 29 electoral votes. So let me ask you a question. Do you think that your vote is worth less than someone who lives in Wyoming? No, shouldn't be, right? That's another function of this winner take all, because what you do is you leverage the vote by not giving by giving all of the votes to the person who won in that state. Does everyone get that? It's very important because it's the key to this whole thing. Next slide. So how can we fix this? Okay, so there are really two ways. One, we can amend the Constitution. And you know this almost happened. 1970, Birch Bayh from Indiana, a very red state I might add, got it through the House, and it was on its way to the Senate where it was filibustered. So it never got passed. Almost passed. Birch Bayh said when he wrote his book that the saddest thing in his life was that he was not able to do this. Now, we could amend it now. It takes 2/3 of both houses, House and Senate in Washington, as well as 2/3 of the state legislators in order to pass a constitutional amendment. Can I see the hands of all those who think we could pull that off now? Probably not, right? The other way we could do it is we could work within the Constitution and change the way the Electoral College works. And that's what I'm here to talk about. Whoop, oh, I went the wrong way again. There we go. Oh my God. Can you put that back together again? I am so sorry. So, winner take all are bills passed by the states. And it gives, as we said earlier, the Constitution gives them the right to do that. And there are some histories that are worth mentioning in that regard. So for example, how many of you remember how senators used to be elected? Anybody know how they were originally elected? Why? Yeah, they were originally elected by the state legislatures. Yeah. Oh, that is true. Trust me. Thank you very much. I'm going the wrong way again. I can't, clearly, there we go. Oh. There, is that right? Yes, that's right. Okay, good. So senators in 1913, after about, let me make sure I've got the right number. The senators, there were about 10 or 11 states that already passed it on their own. Got it? It's very important. The second, of course, is women's suffrage. And as you probably all know, there were, I believe it was 19 states that had already given women the right to vote before it was passed nationally. There's a theme here. If you start with the states, people will see that it's not so bad after all. And what it does is it greases the wheels for that very complicated process of getting the Constitution amended. So, let's talk about where we are with National Popular Vote. Oh my God, I finally got it right. So look at this. See the green states? These are all states that have passed National Popular Vote. For a total of 195 electoral votes. How many votes do you need to elect the president? 270. It means we need only 75 more. Let me say that again. 75 more. Now, of course, it would be wonderful if Florida passed it, which would deliver 30. But again, I don't think that's going to happen in the next couple of years. But there are states that are ripe for passing national popular vote. And one of the things that the group who are here do is we help other states. We make calls into state legislatures, we call, and they come up. And this could actually happen, ladies and gentlemen. Are you with me? I mean, we might see this before I'm 6 feet under. That's my objection. And not only that, but it works within the Electoral College. We don't have to do anything else. So let's talk about some of its elements here. Oh, God, I'm going the wrong way again. No, I was going right? There we go. So, first of all, it's constitutionally conservative. By that I mean it fits within the federalist system and it's a decision that the states make. It does not alter the Constitution. It doesn't violate the Constitution. And to that regard, this may come up later, the Supreme Court recently affirmed the plenary authority of the states around this issue when they were dealing with faithless electors about 1.5 years ago. It retains the Electoral College, and it's approved by the participating states. So what would happen if it actually got elected, if it actually got passed in enough states? First of all, candidates would campaign in 50 states, not 10 or 12. Think about that for a minute. So what would be the impact of having candidates go everywhere? One is, of course, there'd be a higher turnout, particularly in the flyover states. But another result would be federal largesse would go equally to all the states. But the most important, from my point of view, is that it would force candidates to do what? They'd have to think about what everybody wants, and not just the folks on the left or the folks on the right who help continue making the states reliably blue or reliably red. Do you have any idea what that would do to this country? I mean, it would be such a breakthrough because it would force people to figure out how to work together. So you would have something like the Electoral Count Act where you're actually solving some problems. Now, there's a lot of that goes on and that we don't, that doesn't make it all the way down to us. But that would be a stunning change. And at least from my point of view, I think it would be a good thing. And I hope you do too. So what's the status in Florida, right? Whoops, wrong way again. I think it jumps on me, actually. So for the past 7 years, we have had bills, an NPV bill filed in the House and in the Senate. And this coming year, because Joe Geller, who was our champion, was termed out, this year we have a new guy who's stood up and said, I'm going to be a leader in this, and that's Mike Gottlieb, who comes from Broward County, and of course the person you all know, Vic Torres, and his wonderful wife, Carmen, who is of course a member of the League of Women Voters, and he is also filed. We are going to, when I say that, it's a wonderful table over here, and about 1,000 people who belong to Floridians for National Popular Vote, we are going to work really hard to see if we can get a hearing. That would be an accomplishment for us. Passages, it's a long way. But again, we support other states, which is key because it could get passed. So where's the League of Women Voters on this? Oh, you know, I think this thing jumps on me. So this is a picture, some of the folks here. The League of Women Voters supports the abolishment of the Electoral College and the implementation of National Popular Vote until abolishment can be achieved. So, and they've been very supportive, and I think if you look carefully, the woman in red is in fact Susan Windmiller. It is you, right? Yeah. And that was at our, I know, that was at our national convention in Chicago. What year was that, 2018? Yeah, 2018. And so just a little bit about us, but, all right, baby, what did I do this time? Am I good? No, I'm trying to go to another slide. There we go. So we have some partners in crime. Obviously, there's a National Popular Vote, Inc., which I commend to you all if you're interested in this at all. Brilliant website that has more information about this than you can possibly imagine. We have a steering committee of 10, I think 2 of whom are with us in the room today. We have 22 district chairs throughout the state. We have about 70 plus volunteers, and we have over 1,000 on our mailing list, and we have 2 publications. So we would invite you, of course, to join us, but that's, you know, that's, if you want to do that, please do that. But far more importantly is I think this is an opportunity for my partner in crime here, Mike, to come on up, and he's going to ask me some questions about this, and then I think you're going to get a chance to ask questions as well.
Well, thanks for that presentation. It's very informative.
Oh.
I'm just glad I don't have to operate a clicker.
Yeah.
I wanted to start by asking you a question about the constitutional underpinnings for the way we vote now. As I understand it, the founders, one of the reasons they set this up is to assuage the concerns of small states, that they would be overwhelmed by a popular vote that would be held in other, you're shaking your heads, this might be a myth, but that is one of the understandings of why it is. So why is that 18th century concern not applicable in the 21st century?
Well, first of all, it was not an 18th century concern. What were they concerned about with the Electoral College? Slavery. That was the issue. And they wanted to figure out how to keep the Union together. And they came up with this Electoral College, and then they did something that's so awful I can't even talk about it, was they counted African Americans as 3/5 of humans when they counted the population in those states. And that's how they kept the South in the Union. And of course, women and African Americans couldn't vote, but yes, they counted them in the population, which gave them the denominator. That's what they were concerned about. This business, I said, the other one, of course, is urban, you know, big states versus little states, and urban versus rural. Those weren't issues at that point. So, you know, that's really the answer to your question.
Okay,
they were concerned about other things.
You beat me to the punch on another question, which is the influence that urban centers would have. Seems like they would be much greater. You combine New York and Los Angeles and Chicago, and you've got a boatload of votes right there. They're all blue areas.
Yeah.
So talk about why people who are in rural areas should not be concerned that they're just going to get, again, overwhelmed by urban areas.
Okay, well, first of all, if you add up all the people who live in the 100 largest cities in the country, right, you get 60 million people. If you add up all the people who live in rural areas, guess what? You get 60 million people. So where's the other 130 million? Suburbs. Got it? So it's really a non-issue. It's a fantasy that people have. And then I could go back and show you the chart, which showed, in fact, small states have more power than big states. So in fact, it's the other way around. These are myths, misunderstandings, intentional distribution of incorrect facts. I leave it to you all to figure out.
Well, okay, but let me offer a hypothetical that
Okay.
in the state of Florida sounds fairly crazy right now. But let's just say that Florida were to pass this compact,
Right.
become part of it.
Right.
And which seems unlikely now considering the makeup of this legislature, but let's just assume that happens. And let's assume that they do it fast, and let's assume that in 2024, the nation is operating under this compact. Let's assume Ron DeSantis runs for president, and let's assume he did as well or better than he did yesterday. So the people of Florida might overwhelmingly vote for Ron DeSantis to be president of the United States, but hypothetically again, the popular vote comes out in favor of whoever the Democratic nominee is.
Right.
So how are people in Florida, this large majority of people who voted for Ron DeSantis, how are they supposed to feel about the outcome?
Well, they should understand that when you add up all the people in the United States, and Ron didn't win, then he doesn't deserve to win. Why is it that why do we organize things? There's a wonderful little movie, if I had it, I'd show it right now, where what is sacrosanct about having the vote come from the state rather than the whole country? Because what happens is it gives more power to those states. Why should Wyoming have an outsized power than Florida when we have more people here? Are the people in Wyoming better than you and me? I don't
was just in
understand
Wyoming.
why
They're
that.
okay.
Pardon?
I was just in Wyoming. They're okay.
Well, they're lovely people. But I'll give you a perfect example. Okay, so we're in let's see if I can get this right. 2004 election. And you'll recall that George Bush was a minority president. And he was desperate when he ran for the second time not to be a minority president. So he looked around to find out what it was that he could do in Florida because he wanted to win Florida. Well, back in the olden days, Florida was pretty easy to understand. South was blue, north was red, and in the middle, basically the I-4 corridor, right? So they did some polling and they discovered the single most important issue to people who lived in the I-4 corridor, it was drugs, right? The cost of drugs. And so he decided that if he got reelected, that he would put that in the Medicaid program. In fact, that's exactly what happened. He came down to the I-4 corridor and he said, if you elect me, I'm going to go ahead and put it in place. I'm going to go ahead and add drugs to the Medicare program. One, he did it, okay? It's the largest expansion of, what are they called, of eligible benefits since the Medicare and Medicaid programs were passed in the 60s. But what about other people? Maybe they thought something else was more important. Maybe if he'd gone out and he'd talked to everybody in the United States, they would have said, no, drugs aren't important, education's important. Now, in fact, he thought education was important. The point is that he gave outsized power to the folks in the I-4 corridor instead of saying what's important to the entire nation. That's really the problem with this current system. Does that make sense? Okay. Did that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yes. Okay, I think we can assume that if the compact reached its magic number
Right.
And went into effect, there would be some consternation in some
yes.
states. So I think we can also assume that they would start dreaming up ways to undermine that. And one of those ways might
So
mean
interesting.
to try and thwart the ability to get a national popular vote in the first place. And one way that might happen, for example, is you could, in Alabama in 1960, they elected electors. They didn't elect a president; they elected electors.
Right. Good call. Yeah.
And another way and another possible complication might be like ranked choice voting, which could make it more difficult to reach a total.
Well,
but
ranked
anyway, there might be more imaginative ways to do it.
there are more
So maybe you
imaginative.
can talk about what some of those roadblocks would be and what the answer is to that.
Okay, so when I go out to visit with legislators in Florida, and I'm sitting down and I've got my little slides in front of me and I'm walking through da-da-da-da, and the legislator will say, you know, Kathleen, this is really nice, but you know, it's just never going to happen here. And you know what I say? You're absolutely right. This can happen and you don't need to participate in this game. Do you get it? I know some people got it because you all laughed. They could be out of the game. They would be irrelevant. Because you only need 270 votes and there are 540, right? Yes, 540. Now, I will tell you that perks up the ears of some legislators in Tallahassee. Now they want to understand how it works. Now, of course, that's not true. Many of those who are Republicans are really not interested in it because it's not going to pass, and I think they're right. It's not going to pass right now. But it's important to understand it could pass and they would be out of the game. And over time, people would say, if you go out and do polling, by the way, we did polling here in Florida. The League of Women Voters did polling here in Florida, 2017. 68% of the registered voters in Florida think that the president ought to be elected by popular vote. It's true. There was another one. Help me out. Pre-Research did one about 3 or 4 months ago. And again, it came up, it wasn't 68, I think it was 63%. This is an idea whose time has come. You know, what will happen is it will also speed it up. What there will be is a challenge. You know, it'll go right to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's going to say the following, because they just reaffirmed this. I may have mentioned this to you. They reaffirmed it in the decision that they handed down, I'm going to say 18 months ago, maybe 24 months ago now, on faithless electors. And they said, no, it's in the purview of the states to decide how they choose their electors and what the electors are supposed to do. So, you know, there will be suits and there'll be unhappiness, et cetera. But my guess is that people will begin to see that it's an idea whose time has come. Let me ask you a question. If we were getting together a new government, would we ever create something like the Electoral College? Right? I mean, think about it. You know, it's like the appendix. You know, it was once useful, but not so much anymore.
What about states? If I'm not mistaken, some states have passed, the legislatures have not passed this, but they've done it through an amendment to their state constitution. Is that correct?
No.
It's not. It's only been legislature.
It's only been legislature.
Okay.
And what you're talking about is Colorado. What Colorado did, they passed it in 2018. And what happened there was that the Republicans essentially were caught asleep. And so they all got together, they went out and they got signatures of, I don't know, 150,000 people, and they raised money, and they put it on the ballot. And it turned out that the ballot initiative was defeated, which is one of the miracles of the Western Hemisphere. And let me just say, the League of Women Voters in Colorado were instrumental in making sure that that was not overruled. But the interesting question that raised was, does the legislature have to do something that's in a ballot initiative?
Not in Florida.
You know, one might argue that it's, you know, if 80% of the people in a state want to do something, that the legislature ought to pay attention to it. But now, the truth is it never came up because the initiative was defeated. So Florida still has national popular vote, and I think they have a Republican governor, so it's not going to change much right now. I'm sorry, what did I say? Yeah, Colorado, sorry, my mistake.
Okay, so just so yeah, I'm clear, I know this is a little bit down in the weeds, but if a state were to pass it by initiative,
A by initiative?
through an initiative
Yeah.
rather than through the legislature,
Right.
would that make the outcome vulnerable, since the Constitution is pretty clear that legislatures choose
Yeah.
the manner in which electors
Right.
are?
You've gone down a hole that I don't know enough to have an
Okay, okay.
opinion on.
Okay.
I mean, I know what I'd like it to be, but I don't know what the rules are here. Is there a lawyer here, or a constitutional lawyer who could fill us in?
Not me. Well, I guess one other question I wanted to ask is there seems to be a lot of concern, some of it real, some of it feigned, over election fraud. And I wonder if you have any idea or any thoughts on how a change like this would it make elections more likely to be subject to fraud or less likely?
The answer is less likely. So if you have a small election, let's say you have an election in a county, and let's say I'm making this up, 10,000 voters, and there is some fraud that goes on. Maybe someone's brought in 200 votes, 200 ballots that are not appropriate, and they get into the mix, right? So if you have 200 on a base of 10,000, maybe you could swing the election, right? Because elections are very tight, right? But if you have 160 million people voting, in order to swing the election, you got to have a big fraud. And if you're going to have a big fraud, what? It isn't going to happen. Because your denominator's so big. You'd have to get a fraud of, pick a number, in the Clinton, in 2016, you would have had to have 3 million acts of fraud. And for this past one, you would have had to have, what was the final number, 8 million that Biden beat him? You'd have to have 8 million fraudulent ballots. Does that make sense?
Of course, in 2000, you would have only needed 537.
And that's correct. But that was, of course, because somebody said, I think it's more important for the smooth transition than to fight this puppy.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question. Democrats have won the last 4 elections, the popular vote in the last 4 elections. So it seems like, at least the way history is swinging right now, this compact stands to benefit Democratic presidential candidates more than Republicans. Is that true?
No.
Thank you.
And the reason is that if you think about it, what everyone wants ultimately is for votes to count. And it makes no sense long term. So for example, my best example is Illinois. Illinois, I think, was the first or second state to pass national popular vote. And the head of the group that put it together was the Republican head of DuPage County, which is where I lived at one point in my career. So it's there were Republicans who think this is good for our democracy, small d. It doesn't work to have a minority president. Think about it. That's why George Bush was so determined to make sure that he won, and he did. He won by a pretty strong landslide. Ultimately, right now, of course, they're right. If it weren't for the Electoral College, would Republicans have a chance? Think about it. No. I mean, am I missing something? Think about it. There are more Democrats registered, although that number is changing as an aside. Most people are what? Independents. So what you want to do is you want to get candidates who in fact focus on solving problems rather than supporting their power base by pandering. How's that? Pandering? Is that a good one? Pandering to their either their left base or their right base.
Okay, well, now it's your turn. If you're a member of the League of Women Voters, if you would like to ask a question, there's a microphone over here to my left. It's already occupied, but if you want to get up and form a line, please, just a gentle reminder that the microphone isn't for speeches, it's for asking questions. So let's get started. You raised right up there, so you're first.
Well, I'm actually just want to make one other reminder, and that is that the mic, it's an open mic, but it's for members. If you are not a member, we absolutely encourage you to become one today.
Oh.
Right, I forgot that part.
And the other thing I'd like to do, my name is Lee Rambo Kemp, I am a member, is to encourage you to ask just one question at a time. The last couple of times we've had open mic, we haven't had a chance to hear every question because some people had a line of questions, so be considerate. But please come up, line up, and we can't wait to hear your question. Thank you.
Thank you both for coming today. What's in this for Mitch McConnell? The way it works is benefits them. Why would they give up the Electoral College and the small state power that they have that's outsized already?
They're not going to. You're right, they're not going to.
But you said he's for it.
Oh, no, he's for the electoral count vote.
Okay.
That's the procedural. That's what he's for. He would not, I would be very surprised if he were for he would not right now.
Hi, Karen Estrin, League member. Thank you for being here. I'd like to know what are some of the most likely target states that would be
Good question.
passing?
You know, I actually have a list in my head, but I haven't lined it up next to what happened yesterday yet. So I don't know what the final, but let me see, I'll tell you the ones that are ripest. Arizona, believe it or not, I don't know where we ended up, completely where we ended up there. Nevada, pardon? They don't know either. Okay, so we're together. Nevada's one. Nevada actually passed it in both House and Senate, and the governor didn't sign it even though he's a Democrat. That's a long story. Virginia, Michigan, Minnesota. Those are probably the 5, maybe North Carolina, but those are the ones that are ripest right now. Michigan really is very, they filed a bill with something like 15 Republicans who signed on to it.
Hi, my name is Rachel Allen. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters. So you said there are a number of states that have already passed this. I can't remember how many you said.
15.
Okay, so 15. What's the impact that 15 number of states is having on the elections?
Nothing. What it does is it helps me sell it. But right now it has no impact. It doesn't take effect until, it's a compact. You all are familiar with compacts? I'll tell you, most people know about compacts. If you happen to be speeding in Georgia and you come from Florida, they will find you because there's a compact between Florida and Georgia of sharing information around driver's license. That's exactly the kind, and there are literally thousands of them. So this is not anything new. Pardon? Oh yes, sorry. It triggers only when enough states have passed it to equal or exceed 270 electoral votes. So it stays dormant.
I'm Lisa Adkins, I'm a
Hey,
member.
Lisa.
So what is the official stance of the two big political parties in support or?
Yeah, good question. The Democrats are in favor of it, but they're not really out there supporting it in the way that, obviously I think it would be lovely for them to. The Republicans, for the most part, are against it. Although I'm going to tell you a story. Former President Trump actually has said on TV, and I don't have it here, but we've all seen the clip. He says, I think national popular vote is a good thing. And he said, if that had been in place, I would have campaigned differently, and I still would have won. Sounds like Trump, right? It's how you set the game up, right? Just look at any kind of game. I mean, it really is a game. And the way we have it set up right now, in my opinion, is just ridiculous. But, it's the way that it is.
But just to follow up on Lisa's question, though, the only states that have signed on to this so far are states that we would
Yes.
consider to be blue states,
Yes,
right?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, nothing that anyone would consider a red state has gotten on board yet?
No.
Okay, all right.
Patricia Lancaster, I'm a member, and thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering if one of the selling points of this might be the opportunity for the national popular will to be expressed better. I mean, if we look at something like gun violence, I'm all in favor of the Second Amendment, but I do think that there probably a majority of the citizens of the United States would like to see something done, whereas the folks in Washington do not.
Yeah, you have it exactly right. Look at immigration. Look at immigration. It's one of the great tragedies and embarrassments of this country. And it's really because when the Republicans are in power, the Democrats don't want to give them a win. And now that the Democrats are in power, the Republicans don't want to give them a win. I've seen numbers, whether the AK-47s, whatever it's called. I mean, there is a huge, when its polling is done, that says that we ought to get rid of them. I mean, what is this, 17-year-olds going around borrowing them? I mean, help me out.
Hi, Karen Ramberg, member. And just thinking it one step further, you talked about the fact that neither the Republicans nor the Democrats, even though there have been blue states, have come out in support of this. Where's the money? Because let's face it, when you talk about the game is played with money.
Yeah.
And so are there any large donors or financial support for this?
Yes, there are. But not enough. There was the amount of money that was raised for Colorado to oppose the passage of the ballot initiative was in excess of $10 million. So there is money out there. There is an organization called National Popular Vote. This is a segue, maybe I shouldn't go there, but National Popular Vote was founded by a guy who's a mathematician. He's a PhD in mathematics, and he found the scratch-off lottery. And who do you sell a lottery to? You sell a lottery to states, right? And so he would go around selling his product, which was the scratch-off lottery ticket, and he started to really look at these state legislatures because he went to Tallahassee and the other 50 states. And he began to really take a look at this thing, and he had some friends who were lawyers, and they actually created National Popular Vote in 2006 because he could see that that the thing made no sense. And in fact, there's a book. You can go on Amazon. It's called Every Vote Equal. You can buy it for $10. You can also download it for free. It's about 1,200 pages. It definitely will put you to sleep if you read it from beginning to end. But it's a fabulous reference manual. And it will tell you everything you ever wanted to know. And it's got data and information. The guy is brilliant. And I'm not exaggerating. He's around, he's alive.
Another question?
One more? We'll do one more? Oh, yeah.
Yes, again, thank you so much for the information today. And I don't know if this is a question that can be answered, but I am so disheartened every time, or disappointed after every election at the rate of registered voters that are not voting. And do you think it would increase the rate of voters?
Yes, absolutely. There is data that shows that between 5 and 10% increase in voter turnout in battleground states as opposed to what are called flyover states or spectator states. Those are the states where people don't go, where candidates don't go. I really want to say thank you to everybody. You've been a fabulous audience. It's been a lot of fun for me. I want to say thank you to Michael. You are wonderful.
Well, thank you. Let's show Kathleen our appreciation. I want to thank the League, as usual, for holding these kinds of events. They make a lot of difference, I think, and they're badly needed. And I also want to encourage everybody to drive home safely because it's raining, and it's going to get really windy in a little while. And I guess I also just want to say this is a terrific facility, isn't it? So thank you all.
Hello, everybody. I, too, am a League member. I'm Barbara Lanning. I'm the co-president. Bear with me this afternoon. Along with a few other people I see here, I was working the polls yesterday, which usually causes me to take to my bed for 2 days afterwards. So for myself and all my fellow poll workers, thank you for showing. And thank you for the work you did. Thank you to everybody here who volunteered with the League or with a candidate. Raise your hand. That's a pretty good showing. Thank you, guys. Thanks for participating in the elections and doing your part for democracy. So, as I said, thank you so much, Mike and Kathleen. I think we all learned a lot. I just realized I forgot my darn prop. I can't come up here without a prop. Anyway, so today we've learned how National Popular Vote could become law and heard what we need to do. We've learned how the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is a state-by-state effort and how we must work not only here in Florida with Floridians for National Popular Vote, but with the League US to have additional states join the effort. To work on this issue, please join our government committee's efforts as well as the Floridians for National Popular Vote group. Floridians for NPV meet via Zoom on the first Thursday of each month. And you can join them by going to their website and offering to volunteer. You also got on your table little cards with information on contacting them, so you have those that you can refer to as well. If you want further information in the form of a brief monthly email called Bits and Bytes, just contact our League members, Louise Thompson or Ann Koppenhaver by email, and they will add you to the distribution list. So now for announcements. We don't have a Hot Topics in December. We all kind of take December off, and I think this year we'll need it. So our next Hot Topics is Wednesday, January the 11th, 2023. And it's entitled The State of Democracy in Florida. Regardless of your politics, most agree our democracy is under threat. We will examine what is happening here in Florida. So that ought to be rip-roaring, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. We have some upcoming events, and I just wanted to go over those with you real quickly. Tomorrow night at 6, you may not know, but our communication committee chair had to resign for some health reasons. So we're looking to kind of figure out how we might be able to reorganize our committee and revitalize it in the face of a social media age and so much more electronic communication. So if you have any talents, please come tomorrow night. If you have any ideas, if there are things you think we should be doing that we aren't, or things we're doing that we are doing that you don't think are necessary anymore, whatever your ideas, we'd love to hear from you. That's at 6. If you go to the events calendar, you can find the Zoom link. We also have the President's Chat tomorrow night. That's at 7. It's very informal. You can bring your glass of wine, or some of us may have a bottle of wine after last night. I don't know. You can bring whatever you want. It's really, really informal. And I think it'd be interesting just to hear from everybody about what you saw during the election, what you saw us do, what we did right, what we could have done better. I myself have had such a great education. I don't know if Anna's still here, but I mean, you look at how she has organized her 501c4. I think there are a lot of ideas we can take from other groups, other grassroots groups that we have partnerships with. So I'm just really interested to hear everybody's ideas and bat it around and, you know, commiserate. Then on November 29th, guess what? It's Giving Tuesday. So you'll be able to donate to the league then on that National Day of Giving to help groups that are trying to do good in the U.S. We also are having a bigger and better holiday sip and shop this year. Not only will you have the chance to go to 10,000 villages and spend your money and get your Christmas list checked off, but apparently there's a flyer, Lee is telling me, on your table. This year there's going to be a second store that you can visit, which is J. McLaughlin. I did not know it before, but I have a friend who is the most well-dressed person I've ever seen in my life. And I didn't even know what a designer clothes was until we were in college and she told me. I was like, really? Anyway, she says those are the best leggings in the entire world. So, you know, just a little hint for you. I could use them. And finally, our holiday celebration will be on December 15th at the University Club. I hope everybody's going to be there. It's a time for us to just get together, catch up, have fun, and just be together. So we'll be looking forward to that. And Nicolette is scheduled to come back for that. So you'll want to come if you want to see Nicolette and catch up with her. So with that, unless there's anything else, we stand... Oh.
We are recycling all of the campaign signs, so if they're in your yard, please do not put them in the trash. We need to recycle and keep them out of the landfill. And there's lots of places, if you look on the City of Orlando's website, it lists all the places where you can take those signs, and you can take your neighbors or any that you find just on the side of the road.
Thank you. That's a great program, and I know that after the primary, they already beat their general election from 2020 hall, so to speak. So please do recycle those signs. So with that, the wind and the rain seem to be blowing strong, so be careful going home, and we'll see you for Hot Topics in January.